in the chat room. And hey, the Hangout is on air live right now, this very moment. It is the Audible. I am your host, Cecil Lammey, Sigmund Bloom, Matt Waldman, Dr. Jene Bramel here. And Dr. Jene, you were just saying how, oh man, not again. Here we go. I hate this. I think all of us hate this because all of us have a great appreciation for Deshaun Watson. But Dr. Jene, that's where we begin. Let's go through what we know, and let's go through the latest news about Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson now with an ACL injury.
Yeah, you know, Thursday's usually the quietest day of the week as far as injury goes. We're getting information about players that are coming back to practice and players that aren't. So, you know, it went from very quickly escalating from, you know, Watson was listed on the injury report with a knee injury, and then Rappaport said there was some concern for an ACL, and then very shortly after that, it was confirmed that it was an ACL tear. So this is something that Watson has been through before, played through a little bit with the brace. That's obviously not going to happen this time. It's not something that's recommended. It was his opposite knee. We do know that players who tear one ACL have a higher risk of tearing both that same ACL, but the highest risk is tearing the ACL on the opposite knee. So what we're hoping for here is no associated injuries to the cartilage, no additional ligament tears, very isolated ACL injury. And even at that, it's going to have to be a very smooth rehab for him to be ready in 6 to 7 months in time to avoid the PUP list at the end of next July. But I do think, you know, we've seen it with Joe Flacco. We've seen it with other quarterbacks in the past. But there's not a great comp for, at least recently, for a mobile quarterback like Watson to be back on the field and playing. It was one thing for Joe Flacco to be a statue in the pocket after an ACL injury 8 to 9 months afterwards. It's going to be another thing for Watson to get through his rehab smoothly enough to be ready for week 1 of next year. I don't think I don't think we should be expecting otherwise necessarily, but this is going to go well into training camp as far as, you know, how soon we're concerned. So we hope we hear nothing but good news in the rehab and that he's able to recover and, you know, pick up where he left off this year.
Gene, we have to talk about Andrew Luck again.
Yeah.
And we've gotten some piecemeal information. I'm not sure what we can trust of what we've seen. Some muscles, something that it just stopped getting better. Did you find anything meaningful? And of course, the question on everyone's mind is, you know, you see Steve Young saying he's concerned. A lot of people now coming out of the woodwork to say they're not just worried about Andrew Luck this year, but long-term. Are you?
Well, sure. I think you have to be. And maybe there was some, you know, maybe we got a little bit more detail from Chris Ballard today than we had before in terms of, you know, had all these specialists see him and the consensus was that rehab was necessary and there's not a need for arthroscopic surgery to look into the joint. And but I don't know, do you trust anything the Colts have said about this over the last 2.5 years? I don't know that I do. So I think anything is on the table at this point, and unfortunately that includes a shoulder joint that just can't be put back together well enough for him not to have some soreness or instability or something like that. No, there's not anything particular in what was said today that makes you think that that's more likely than it was a week ago. But, you know, when you're getting a cortisone injection for soreness 8 to 9 months after your shoulder surgery that was meant to relieve instability and soreness and everything that goes along with that, then I think you have to be worried about it. And it's a labral repair on an overhead throwing athlete. So, you know, the success rate for that is not 100%. And, you know, you would hope that a player like Luck, who has been, you know, one of the best quarterback talents the league has seen for a while with the best surgeons and best rehab, would be at the, you know, have the best chance of getting as close to the ceiling expectation as possible. But that's not a realistic expectation. And you hope that this is not, you know, the joking Matt Waldman comment about Greg Cook, but these things happen sometimes. I hope that doesn't become the case. But we're going to be asking this question all the way through June, July, August, and into early September next year, even if he is cleared for training camp, if the offseason goes very well for him and he's ready to play in week 1. Until we see him throw balls with strength and accuracy and stamina, the same concern we've had all this year as we waited for him to come back, I don't think anybody can say for certain that 2018 and beyond is a certainty for Luck. Hopefully it is, but yeah, I think those questions are definitely going to be out there.
Well, let's hope that Luck heals smoothly this offseason and that he'll be ready to play and that he can have the career that we've all hoped that he's capable of having. Let's move on. Let's get out of these like quarterback situations and start talking about some tight ends here. How about Delanie Walker? He's a game time decision you have listed here for his ankle. Can you elucidate a little more to us about his ankle and and help me out here as I'm finding a loss for words.
Yeah, so I'm still working through. It was a busy enough day, and I got started a little bit late, so I don't have Thursday's injuries expectations up. But I'm leaving him as a game time decision, and that's kind of a hedge because I just don't always trust Mike Mularkey. Now, what we have seen is that with DeMarco Murray and other players, the Titans are more than happy to have a player not practice at all through the week and then activate them and give them a major role in the offense.
Old school.
Yes, it's been Murray and it's been Delanie Walker. Now, you're not going to see that with Corey Davis. I don't think you'd see that with Derrick Henry. It has to be somebody that they trust in the offense and knows things inside and out so that there really doesn't, that no matter what game plan you choose, it can be executed. And I think that applies to Delanie Walker. However, this is a bone bruise. It's a fickle injury. When you say pain tolerance, well, it's one thing to play through rib injuries. It's one thing to play through an ankle sprain. It's another thing to play through an injury that's probably weight-bearing with that ankle. So Mularkey said yesterday they were optimistic. Today he maybe wasn't as optimistic, but he said there was still plenty of time left for Walker to return and be able to play. And he said yesterday and again today that he does not have to practice at all to be active. So I'm leaning a little bit more doubtful than probable with him right now, but there's been too much. I was that way on DeMarco Murray at least twice this year and with some other players in Tennessee. So until we hear somebody say that he absolutely cannot go this week, then I think you have to give him a chance to play. And then the issue becomes with Corey Davis back, with DeMarco Murray not on the injury report, with Derrick Henry and the rest of that offense healthy, if Delanie Walker is active, how do we know whether or not he's going to be active? Is he going to be DeMarco Murray active, or is he going to be, different in that regard? And hopefully we get enough
Jordan Reed active.
Tomorrow. Yeah, well, yeah, as in inactive this week. But I think hopefully we get a little bit of information from Tennessee in that regard tomorrow. But I'm leaning towards limited at active, if active is probably going to be the best case scenario.
Dr. Gene, I want to ask you about a healthy player, actually, who just,
do we have those?
I think, yeah, exactly. They're at this point of the year, right? Yeah. And everybody's playing banged up. But I just consider, and we got plenty to talk about when it comes to the Broncos, but I just consider Demaryius Thomas. And in thinking about just the compilation of injuries, like he's healthy-ish now, but he hasn't scored a touchdown in a year. They don't trust the screen pass again. And as I watch him out there and as I talk to people, there's a feeling maybe that step has been lost. Can we discuss the compilation of injuries? Because this guy is as healthy as he's been in the last couple of years, yet we don't see the production and we don't see him look. I mean, it happened fast with Marvin Harrison, right? But all of a sudden Marvin Harrison was done like that, like can't play anymore, done. And we've seen it with others. Other guys stretch it out, right? Anquan Bolden, Hines Ward, they stretch it out. And Demaryius is stretching it out. Demaryius Thomas isn't done. But I just watch him every day, and I'm like, you're not the same anymore. Why?
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my question for you. If you see him every day, if you are seeing a change with him not being listed on the injury report, then I think that's meaningful. I don't think anything jumped out when I saw that short pass turn into a long touchdown run called back by penalty last week. He looked okay doing that.
But he was caught from behind. A younger Demaryius is gone.
Probably would have been, yeah. So, well, yeah. So, right. I mean, but we've seen players as they get a little bit older, whether they lose a half a step or not, are still able to use their veteran skills, things that they've learned over time. And, maybe they're not blowing it out on a 70-yard touchdown run after catch, but there are other things there. So I haven't seen anything specific that makes me think there's one particular injury that's a problem. He's had calf issues. He's had other soft tissue injuries below. The hip thing, I think, is going to continue to be a concern. Whether or not that's something that, could have benefited from surgery or something, we're not going to know because we're not privy to that information. But, I'm going to rely on your judgment. If you're seeing things that have you concerned about him, then I think we ought to be too, knowing that he's had multiple off seasons to look to try to address some of those things. I don't know that we can say that as you say, the kind of the compendium of injuries. I don't think that it's I don't think it's probably correct to say that those are compensatory situations without knowing specifically how much the hip is limiting him.
Are they compilatory? And we have to go back. Like, this is his first offseason that he's ever had in Denver, where he's been able to work during the offseason. And, we're thinking it's centerpiece of the McCoy offense, all these sorts of great things. And it's not quite the same. Like, he's not banged up, and he's not banging on his hip every other play like he was last year in practice. He's just, maybe a little bit older.
Yeah. That happens to the best of us, I guess, along the way, right?
All of us. Everyone. No one's out of your life.
But I don't know, Bloom. You're like reverse aging. You're like some sexual Benjamin Button.
No. Why haven't they made that into? Well, no, we won't even.
Sorry, Joe, for suggesting adult movies.
Maybe they probably have.
See what you started, Gene. It's all.
Matt's looking it up on his phone right now.
You're gonna blame me for that one. I'm taking the heat for that one.
I'm not going to blame you for that. I'm not going to blame you if Jamison Crowder doesn't play this weekend. But after his
don't, because that seems like that's likely to be the case.
Go on.
So there are going to be players on Washington's active game day roster that are not going to be able to play this week. So one of the issues that we're going to have is there's 7, 8.
7.
Where are my notes? 7 offensive linemen on the injury report, in addition to Niles Paul, who's probably not going to play, Jordan Reed, who will not play, Jamison Crowder, who, when Jay Gruden says during the week that he's nervous about a player, rarely play. And there's 7 offensive linemen, and I think Clemmings and Moses are going to play, but there's an argument that none of the other 5 are. So right there, you've got 8 guys that are likely to be inactive. So there's going to be somebody on the game day, 40 whatever. 46 that is not going to play. And I think there's an argument that Crowder is the most likely to be that player. So we may see Crowder active and maybe not dress, which would be nice to know. Or he may be active and dressed and do nothing. It's going to be tough. I think Crowder of all these players has got the highest chance of being that guy. But Sean Laval looks like he's going to miss time. Spencer Long is not going to be back. If Brandon Scherf can be active, that's the other player where you might not be certain exactly how this is going to go down, where you may have he may be on the active roster but not be able to go. So I don't think Crowder's going to go. Jordan Reed is definitely not going to go, and we know that Williams and Long and Laval probably aren't. So Washington is in a world of hurt this week.
Well, you get multiple choice, Gene. I would add Achilles to this because I was going to ask you either about a player's tooth or about an Achilles.
Yeah.
But but let's go the third option here instead. I'll just pick it for you, and let's talk about Golden Tate's shoulder. How's that progressing?
He's not on the injury report at all. He's Monday Night Football game. Detroit did not put him on the injury report. The Packers did not put Brian Bulaga on the injury report. So 2 pretty refreshing things as far as the Thursday practice report goes. My brain is toast anymore. Who was the tooth?
Oh, Taylor Gabriel.
Yes, so he's going to play. Gabriel's going to play. He was fully practiced today. It shouldn't be an issue. And the players with the heel. I think we're going to see Michael Bennett play, even though he's not been practicing much. Richard Sherman's probably going to go again. So I don't think there's too much concern about some of those other guys along the way.
If we were casting Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer amongst us here on the Audible, Bloom would easily be Yukon Cornelius. Matt, though, with the tooth question, would be Hermie the Elf. I want to be a dentist. He'd be that guy. Dr. Gene, I think you're Burl Ives. You're smooth, baby. Silver and gold. Just want to know about it. And, of course, I'm Rudolph. I mean, come on. Let's
I thought you were like, wasn't it the heat miser?
Snowman? I could be the abominable.
The heat miser was not in Rudolph.
Bumbles bounce. Yeah.
Miser.
Let's bounce to a discussion about Greg Olsen and, kind of the path that he's on and how fantasy owners should be scooping him up if he's out there.
Yeah, I think go ahead and make the move now. I think we talked a little bit about this last week as, there are a couple players out there that you were expecting to come back sooner than later, whether it be D.D. Westbrook, who's also back, or Greg Olsen himself. The Panthers said earlier this week that they were targeting week 12 for him. I think Olsen's earliest he can come back to practice is kind of week 10, week 11, and he's been running for a couple of weeks, so he's been allowed to weight bear. If he can get in condition over the next couple of weeks without any setbacks at all, whether they be to the foot itself, and you would hope that not to be the case because he's given himself a good 7 to 8 weeks to recover, which hasn't always been the case with players with these type of injuries. I think it's a really good sign. And then he has to avoid any compensatory soft tissue things as he gets back into football shape. But with Kelvin Benjamin gone, regardless of what they choose to do with Curtis Samuel and Christian McCaffrey, when Greg Olsen comes back, he is their best downfield pass catcher and arguably best short pass catcher, depending on what they do with McCaffrey. So you can see him, if he's ready, come back to a pre-injury workload almost immediately. So yes, if by some chance he's still hanging out on a waiver wire or you're in a shorter roster league, I would try to make room for him as soon as you can.
Gene, you mentioned D.D. Westbrook. Part of the D.D. Westbrook puzzle this week, and maybe even going forward, is one Marquise Lee. And is he the leader in the clubhouse right now with showing up with the most different number of different designations on the injury report, the number of things he's shown up on the injury report, coming out of a bye, not practicing, but it seems like he's done this 2 or 3 times already this year and ended up practicing on Friday and playing and actually looking pretty good. So with that in mind, this is a little different coming out of a bye. What do we know about Lee?
Yeah, I think Jordan Reed and Melvin Gordon are probably giving him a little bit of a run for his money as far as most different designations, fortunately or unfortunately. I don't know. There's nothing. Every once in a while we'll get a note from Ryan O'Halloran. I don't know if there's an O in there or not, if I'm making him more Irish.
No, you're right. Ryan O'Halloran, yeah.
To
Washington beat writer, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there's every once in a while we'll get a note from him, but there's been nothing on Lee. And you're right. I'm kind of working under the assumption that that we've seen him go through this at least on 2 other occasions this year where he really doesn't do much at all until Friday and then is able to take a pretty big workload. And the Jaguars have said that they do not plan on putting D.D. Westbrook into a big role immediately. They kind of want to ease him back into the offense. But if Lee is not able to go, that may be an in for Westbrook to get 40 to 50 snaps rather than 15 to 25. So I think that's big for both players, Lee, whether or not he's on the field or not. But if he's not, maybe we see a whole lot more Westbrook now rather than waiting to see him eased in through week 10, 11, and 12.
Gene, other than the Washington Redskins, which offensive line are you most worried about based on injury?
I felt really good that Bulaga was not on the injury report today. I also like the fact that Brandon Linder, although we don't know, and he wasn't talking to anybody yesterday or today about what his illness that kept him out for about a month is. As I scroll through, if by some chance there's something more that we hear about with Trey Turner not being able to go, he's not practiced this week, but he said he was pretty much going to play. That would be a little bit of an issue. Houston. At this point, you're not sure if Chris Clark is going to be able to go, and without Dwayne Brown there, they may not have tackles ready to go, but it looks like Jeff Allen is going to be all right.
That looks like a winner.
Yeah, I think that one's probably going to be okay. San Francisco still has multiple issues. That one probably should have came to mind first. Joe Staley's not going to play. Brandon Fusco was able somehow to get on the field with his biceps injury last week and then was kind of hobbling off and on. And he's not practiced yet, and there's probably a little bit more nervousness with him than not. Trent Brown's coming back from a concussion, so I think he's going to be able to go. But to be without Fusco and Staley is probably going to be maybe as much as an issue for San Francisco. Not as much as Washington, obviously, but that's going to be a problem for them.
And not a problem to talk to Dr. Jene Bramel here on the Audible in the chat room. React to me, and Mickey K says, Gene is a crazy start. Tevin Coleman over Devonta Freeman. Really worried about his condition. A lot of fantasy owners looking at the Atlanta backfield this week going,
Yeah, so the deal with Freeman is tomorrow is going to be huge. There's something that doesn't quite add up here. So what was reported on Monday was that his shoulder injury was a stinger. And it's not obvious on the video replay, but there are definitely some elements of that. It's either stinger or an AC sprain, which we've seen a ton of those. If it's a stinger, it's odd for them to put him in a no-contact jersey because the concern with those things tends to be range of motion and strength. And if you're still having symptoms 24 hours after a stinger, like we're seeing with Sean Laval in Washington and other players in the past, that tends to be a 3 to 4 week injury. So I don't know why they'd put him on the field in a no contact jersey if it's stinger related. So there's something that doesn't quite add up there if that's the case. So Friday is really important. If he's back to a full practice tomorrow and they put him back where there's nobody's worried about contacting the shoulder, then there's no worry. If it's an AC sprain, we're probably going to see the same thing. So tomorrow is really going to be important there. There's been no concern. Freeman said there's no concern. Dan Quinn says there's no concern. So I'm willing to go with that, and I'm fully expecting him to play. But knowing that you've got a player like Tevin Coleman there, there's plenty of incentive if Freeman isn't himself, and he wasn't himself at the end of the fourth quarter last week in a fairly important game. They didn't have any problems putting Coleman out there for that entire fourth quarter drive. And so you could see the same thing where the split is a little bit more even than what it's been over the past month or so. So to feel fully comfortable with Freeman, you almost have to see some sort of full practice or limited and then not being listed on the game status report at all. So pay attention to how Friday's practice report and game status report looks, and then I think we'll have a better sense from there.
Gene, we don't have to pay attention to the Friday practice report for the Titans for one Corey Davis, full participant on Wednesday. The team site itself said on track to start. And some of this is a little more of the dark art of fantasy projection than the very above board art of science and experience that you're coming from. But the Titans did, with him not playing in the preseason, having a handful of practices, 2, 3, maybe at the most in training camp, start him. Well, they didn't start him week 1, but he still got enough targets. I think he led the team in targets, got 6 catches. The next week, he promptly got hurt. Obviously, there's some risk of, no matter what he does in practice, you really open it up in the game, and there's a risk that he could go out. But otherwise, would you be hesitant to play Corey Davis if you didn't have a clearly better option? Would you be hesitant to play him in his first week back?
I would be hesitant to play him just because we're not sure what his role is going to be. I'm not so starting. I don't know whether or not they're going to be comfortable doing that or not. Going into the bye week, there was some indication that maybe he wasn't going to practice much until this week. But then, when you saw him do something on Monday before the practice report came out, and then he was listed as full on Wednesday, he almost had to have been doing some conditioning for them to be comfortable putting him out there as a quote-unquote full practice both Wednesday and Thursday. And if that's the case, if the plan all along was to start him, maybe, and maybe that's a little bit more likely to happen if Delanie Walker's not out there and they want to move somebody in the slot. But between Rashard Matthews and some of the other pass catchers they have out there right now have been productive over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Taywan Taylor and the like. I don't know that they need him to start, and even if he does, that's not an indication that he's going to get more than 25 to 30 snaps. So I would be leery if you do that. You're looking at maybe what you're looking at with Deontay Thompson here for Buffalo, where you probably can only bank for certain on 15 to 20 snaps, and you're hoping for, he's the type of player that can pull it off, but you're hoping for, kind of an unexpected high upside play to make the production worthwhile.
Des Bryant going to be all right this weekend?
Yeah, he fully practiced today, so I would hope that to be the case. And with Ezekiel Elliott out, knowing that it's going to be a kind of a situation by committee in the backfield, you would think that there's going to be a whole lot of Des Bryant involved, assuming that they can find ways to get him open. Cole Beasley limited today. Hopefully he's going to be able to return. It sounds like they're hoping for that to be the case. They've got a number of wide receivers that they can move around out there, so Beasley isn't critical. But it looks like there hasn't been any indication that there's something so concerning with Bryant's knee that it's going to crop up during the game and be a problem.
It is the Audible Live here on youtube.com/footballguys, DOTCOM. And a lot of people asking several questions in the chat room. So chat room, keep reacting and let's keep chatting over there. Dr. Gene, I want to go back to you with a guy that I've been monitoring and certainly picked up in dynasty leagues is Kenny Golladay with the hamstring injury. Now we've got good news on Golden Tate. It doesn't seem like we're getting the same vibe from the rookie who hasn't done much since week 1.
Nope, didn't practice today. Almost no chance he plays this week. And it's been twice now where we've seen him try to practice on Wednesday and then not practice for the rest of the week. That happened last week. It happened 2 or 3 weeks previous. So, whether it was another setback or he just wasn't ready, until we see him do anything in consecutive practices, he's at least 2 weeks away. And a lot of times, you can count the bye week for Corey Davis as being the first of his 2 weeks from a multiple week soft tissue injury like a hamstring strain. I think we have to see the same with Golladay. So no chance he plays this week. I would think that he's questionable at best for week 10 too. So week 11 is the earliest, and then you see him eased back from there if that's what happens. And if it was, if there was more of a setback than what we knew about happened last Wednesday, it could be even longer than that.
Gene, this one, I understand if you don't necessarily have all the details because it happened right before we came on the air. Pierre Garcon on injured reserve vertebrae. They said 8-week injury, but it was near the neck, and we know when it's the neck. So yeah, we should not necessarily trust the first reports. How worried are we about him from a long-term perspective?
I hope that today's reports are accurate. So this is not what happened to Derek Carr, Cam Newton, Tony Romo. This is a totally different, but this is the ring around the spinal cord. Now, when they say displaced, and if somebody's saying not career-threatening in 8 weeks, that's specific enough to where it probably means that only one part of the column was injured and that there isn't a concern about healing to where there'll be narrowing in the spinal canal or longer-term nerve issues and no immediate nerve issues either. So the concern with a broken neck tends to be there's more than one area of the ring that's injured. So there's compression, or either there's rotation or lateral movement in the spine itself that then causes bruising and sometimes tearing and transection of the cord. That doesn't seem to be an issue, but I don't know that I'm willing to say this is, how would I know? But I think I'll be much more comfortable when we hear that Pierre Garcon has been cleared for contact, whether it's 8 weeks, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. But the longer it goes, the more worried you have to be about him. But the specifics of John Lynch's report today, hopefully that proves to be accurate to where it's not a longer term injury than that, and that it functions similar to how the other injuries we've seen in the past, which is that even though it's not going to be a 2 to 3 week injury like the quarterbacks that we've seen, it's something that he'll be able to fully recover from, and it's not going to turn into again, these aren't the same things, but in terms of multiple specialists and deciding what to do long term, where it's a David Wilson, Cliff Averill, those sorts of things as we go.
Gene, any reason to be concerned about Justin Houston's knee?
Yeah, and he's said that he's concerned about it too. Maybe not so much to where he's going to miss games necessarily, but we know it's a surgically repaired knee. And when you have LCL injuries, and that's one of the things he had repaired, it's difficult to get from what the orthopedic surgeons will tell you, it's difficult to get the structure of the knee back to where it's not too stiff or not too loose. And it's the same thing similar. It's not the same ligament, but similar to what we talked about with Wendell Smallwood a month or so ago, where if there's some leftover issues with the joint, you're going to have inflammation and soreness, and it's going to limit you from time to time. Now, it may not limit game time, snaps, that sort of stuff, but it's definitely a concern for him over the longer term. And you hope that that's all it is, and it doesn't become more of a cartilage issue over time. But that would be the concern, is that the inflammation there and the soreness is related to either some cartilage thing that's been there all along, or because his knee joint isn't the same as it was, that some of those things, that he's getting some degenerative changes and some arthritis as we move forward.
He is Dr. Jene Bramel. You follow him on Twitter at Jene Bramel, and you check out all of his work at footballguys.com. Dr. Jene, before I let you out of here, some people may be going, I thought you were a Steelers fan. Well, I do some work with charities around here in the Mile High City, and one of those that I did last week at St. Joseph's Hospital was for Bonfils Blood Center. It's Drive for Life 20 with the Denver Broncos. I'll show you my shirt. There you go. For 20 years, the fan has been working with the Denver Broncos, with Bonfils Blood Center, and just in learning about how important it is for people to donate blood. The fact that I believe they told me it expires after 41 days, like all these sorts of things. If you want to help out in the community, which is where it starts, by the way, because we all kind of have that vibe on this show, and our listeners have it as well. Like, we want to help people. Dr. Jene, can you just tell our viewing and listening audience how important it is to give blood?
I don't know what the numbers are, but at least in around my area, it would seem like the call for blood goes out more and more and more frequently. So I don't know if the number of regular donors is decreasing over time or not, but hope it never is, but it could be your loved one that needs blood somewhere down the line. And if it's not there, we're not at a point yet where we can synthetically make blood to give people when they need it. So very heavily reliant on donations. There are other ways to, but it's not quick, where you can stimulate red blood cell production and otherwise. So if it's something that you're comfortable doing, and I know not everyone is, definitely it would be worth considering, and don't wait for the call on your local radio station or anywhere else to say that they could use some extra blood. Try to make it a regular part of your thought process if it's something you're willing to do.
He's Dr. Jene Bramel. He's officially awesome. Dr. Jene, good night, sir. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Let's keep it quiet for the rest of the week if we can.
Yeah, let's please do that. Bloom, before we jump into all this hotness, baby, we need a game update.
I wanted to ask Dr. Jene if bloodletting has any actual, health benefits, but I'll save that one for next week. And they do give you a cookie and some juice. So,
at Drive for Life 20, you get some sweet Broncos swag. Like, I got a gift bag with a pin, and I got like a Demaryius Thomas photo, like all this cool stuff, and this T-shirt.
Nice. Well, tonight the story has been that the Jets all of a sudden can get pressure on the quarterback. And it's been, and also for years we thought of the Jets' run defense as one of those impenetrable one defenses, and they have been corralling LaShawn McCoy. Tyrod Taylor has still played well. You still see that from an Alex Smith kind of perspective, he's keeping mistakes to a minimum, and he's not trying to take any big chances, or he's trying to take care of the ball. But because of that, they've only managed one touchdown drive. They had another drive into Jets territory that ended with a Jordan Matthews fumble. And the Jets are playing like a team with a lot of competitiveness, a lot of pride. At 3-5, they in the divisional game, already 1-3 in division. They had to get this win, and they're up 17-7 right now with Josh McCown moving well, throwing well. Actually had a touchdown throw to Austin Seferian-Jenkins called back with the, it was technically offensive pass interference, but sometimes you see that kind of push off not called. It was an excellent play to extend the play and make the throw. McCown's thrown a nice touchdown to Robbie Anderson. He's looking as good as ever. He's also ran in a touchdown. So if you went with Josh McCown, if you were scrambling when you lost Deshaun Watson, and McCown was the guy you picked up based on how he's played the last 3 weeks, he's doing it again. And I think we're going to look at his numbers now over this week. In the last 3 weeks, he's a top 5, top 8 fantasy running back. Talking about guys who are healthy, Matt Forte looks healthy. He's dragging tacklers. He's looking great as a receiver. And where this was something that looked more like a, say, 45-10 split or 50-40-10 split. Tonight, it's been much more like Matt Forte, the feature back, and Bilal Powell has gotten 7 carries, but hasn't looked good on those carries. And Elijah McGuire still, not being worked in as much. So it's more like a 60-30-10 kind of split now for Matt Forte. He may have some value going forward for us. And the Jets play Tampa Bay next week, so they can start generating some momentum. And New Orleans is coming to Buffalo. So Buffalo 5-2, everything's feeling great. Things can turn around quickly. And Tyrod Taylor's going to have to do something here. Oh, and I see Bilal Powell running. I see the back of Bilal Powell's jersey, something we've seen a few times. So now the Jets are in position for another score. And just as this Buffalo feel-good story was really gaining some momentum, the Jets are saying, we will have our own feel-good story this year.
Matt Waldman might have been the only person to talk to Bilal Powell at the Senior Bowl. Matt, you remember that? Because he's not a real talkative guy. He doesn't like talking about his background or his history. And Matt, you were able to corral him. So good job, my friend. Author of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. And let's jump into this because there's so many trades, so many deals. Jimmy Garoppolo, let's get to it, Matt. And let's discuss, his fit in a Shanahan system, what fantasy owners can expect. I know I was squatting on him in Fessel OG, just thinking like if anything happens to 45-year-old, 100-year-old Tom Brady, then I've got Jimmy Garoppolo in the Patriots offense. We know about the quick release. We know about the accuracy underneath. You and I have had massive debates and discussions really about Jimmy Garoppolo dating back to the Senior Bowl. Saw him at the Shrine game as well. He was one of those guys that played in both. And we look towards what Garoppolo will be eventually for Kyle Shanahan. What does the crystal ball say to you, Matt, about Jimmy Garoppolo?
Well, just before we do that, Matt Forte with a nice run to the outside for a score. And, Tyrod Taylor, a lot of what the Jets are doing, I don't know if the pass rush is really as great in terms of actually getting to the quarterback as much as it is containing him with great using base sets to get outside and keep him in the middle of the pocket where if there's not a rhythm throw for him to be able to to deliver right away, he can't move around, and there's nothing he can really do. So it's not on Taylor as much as it is that this Bills line is allowing him to be entrapped and encased by the base defense. Exactly.
Much rush, baby.
And then they have a spy. So if he does break the pocket, the spy comes right up and limits him. I mean, you've seen him drop to the ground a couple times in this game rather than trying to run because he knew that he was trapped. So good job by the Jets. Garoppolo, to me, the puzzling thing about Garoppolo is that everyone's going to be very excited about him in San Francisco. Oh, what Mike Shanahan can do with him. Well, long term, very possible. But let's remember, Jimmy Garoppolo began his career in an Erhard-Perkins offense, which, as we have learned when we look at these rookie quarterbacks over the past couple of years, it's easier for rookie quarterbacks to get started in an Erhard-Perkins offense than it is a West Coast offense. And Kyle Shanahan is in a West Coast variant. The differences and the reasons why that is that the West Coast variant, the various receivers on the field each have different routes. They're not what you would call mirrored concepts where it's the same on each side, and it cuts down on what you have to retain. Also, the play calls aren't nearly as long or verbose as they are in the West Coast offense. So while it's not saying one's easier than the other, they're different and they're harder in different ways. If you get a guy like Tom Brady and he's got 5, 6, 7, 15 years in an offense, you bring a veteran receiver in there, and it's going to be hard for a lot of them because all the things that Tom Brady has put on there in terms of layers with pre and post snap adjustments and go, when I nod, you're going to run this option route. When you see the safety do this, that's advanced stuff, whereas with the West Coast offense, the adjustments may be there like that over time, but it's harder to start up with. So I'm a little more skeptical about Garoppolo really having a great grasp of this offense this year because he's spent all this time in Tom Brady's offense, in the Erhard-Perkins offense. So when you look at that, you look at Pierre Garcon is gone, and you don't have a veteran receiving presence who can really run every route with great skill. What's there for him to really take advantage of other than checkdowns to the running backs and George Kittle up the seam? So this to me does not look like a winning scenario for him right away. And if he does perform well, then look, you should have every reason in the world to be optimistic about him next year if he just plays out of his mind and elevates this team right away. I just don't expect it to happen. And the things that we're concerned about long term is what we haven't seen in New England. In New England, he looked pretty good against pressure. He didn't seem to perceive pressure. He didn't seem to turtle it when the pressure, got close to him. But he had evidence of that when he was a collegiate player, of those types of things happening, seeing ghosts a little bit or overreacting to pressure. And, it was enough that it was kind of a knockout factor for me as a guy that I would look at as a future starter or franchise quarterback. So I'm interested in seeing whether the issue wasn't as bad as what I saw, or he's corrected it, or now that he's playing with an offensive line that won't be, and a system that he's got to learn and think more instead of process quickly and react to, whether or not we're going to start seeing turtle Jimmy Garoppolo again.
The Eastern Illinois version. By the way, anyone quickly, do we know Mike Shanahan's college?
Yeah, Eastern Illinois. And Tony Romo, too, for that matter.
Eastern Illinois. There we go. Bloom, let's discuss this situation. Now, without Pierre Garcon, certainly takes some of the edge off. You know what I mean? When discussing what Jimmy Garoppolo could do for this year.
Well, and Dr. G mentioned the San Francisco offensive line is one that is not in a good state right now. Obviously this offense is not in a good state right now. And when Kyle Shanahan says, I'm not sure if he's going to play this year, you understand. And we touch on this. Matt Waldman has been very instructive in this conversation about it. We never see first-round quarterbacks sat in the first year now. It just doesn't happen. Jimmy Garoppolo was a second-round pick, and he was drafted behind Tom Brady, so he had the ability to be in the incubator for a while. And when he finally did start last year, he looked good, especially in that Miami game. He looked like what's important. Whatever the offense is, he looked like a quarterback that could be an extension of the coaches and really understand and internalize the play design, understand the concepts in a way that brings the play to life, and it's not just robotically executing it like, say, Chris Sims did when he was in Tampa Bay, and they winnowed it down to bite-sized chunks for him. So that's encouraging. But that being said, on that same note, would it really serve the 49ers best to just let Garoppolo sit this year? Just let him do mental reps. And if CJ Beathard gets hurt, or if they see that CJ Beathard's getting damaged by this, because John Lynch said a couple of things that folks didn't see. And John Lynch, I think it's going to be great to have him as a GM, because he's really not in this bubble of the front office. When he does interviews, he's really, I mean, the fact that he's been a member of the football media for a while too, I think is really helping us here. So he was very forthcoming. He said they did, unlike Bill Belichick, who in his nice way possible said, none of your business, but basically we weren't going to get out of Jimmy Garoppolo as soon as at the last possible moment, we knew we had to get what we could get for him now. Basically, I think admitting the plan all along was they weren't going to keep Garoppolo on a second contract. John Lynch said they sought Garoppolo earlier in the preseason, offseason. Kyle Shanahan has spoken about Garoppolo, and he has some affinity for him. So why not let him do that and really come out of the gate next year? And one of the things that Matt talked about, and we talked about this at length on the show, about Jimmy Garoppolo and turtling under pressure, and that's the kind of thing that if that's happening when you're at Eastern Illinois, well, how's it going to be in the NFL? Well, perhaps one of the reasons that Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't looking for pressure, wasn't seeing ghosts, was how confident he felt in his ability to execute the plays and in his teammates. And I think that it may be in everyone's best interest here for Jimmy Garoppolo to sit for the rest of the year. They're probably going to give him a contract, $50 million guaranteed, $50 million guaranteed, a 5-year, $100 million contract. Does that sound about right? They're going to have to give it to him this year. They have to give it to him. Give it to him based on what they see this year. And it isn't like if Jimmy Garoppolo goes out there in week 12 and is just terrible and the offense isn't any more productive or successful than it was under CJ Beathard, that they aren't going to give him the contract. People might be saying they shouldn't, but it may stick with him. Speaking of ghosts, it may haunt him. So I actually think that the 49ers are a wise enough organization to heavily consider this. Kyle Shanahan's already said as much as the San Francisco fan base might clamor for it. So I think we might actually see this done in a very judicious way. And let's face it, the 33rd, 34th, 35th overall pick, even if Garoppolo is a bust, who cares about the money? They've got money coming out of their ears in San Francisco. And if you squander an early second on a quarterback that doesn't work out, that's not that big of a deal, honestly.
It's pretty common.
So, yeah, I think that we may look back and say it isn't that New England didn't think much of Garoppolo. It's that they feel like Tom Brady can play for another 3, 4, 5 years. They developed him. They had a great backup, and they were willing to take the risk that Tom Brady gets hurt and they lose a Super Bowl window to get a high second-round pick instead of a late third-round pick, which is a very viable choice to make.
Finding a franchise quarterback's like playing craps. Just got to keep rolling. You get cold. Find the guy, right, Matt? Just find the guy. It doesn't matter. First round, undrafted, free agent, you throw a bunch of money at. Find the guy.
And if the idiot factor invades the NFL draft as usual, and they say that Lamar Jackson's a wide receiver, he might drop to the top of the second round, and Bill Belichick might decide, you know what? I've been watching a little bit of that college game like Andy Reid. I saw what Andy Reid did to us. Maybe we start doing what they do with Deshaun Watson and Alex Smith, and do that a little bit with Lamar Jackson in a few years, and let him sit and learn behind Tom Brady. Wouldn't that be something?
I don't think Jackson would get past Denver.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And by the way, rookie quarterbacks only sit if they love Xbox. I wish he cared about his NFL career like he cared about his Madden Ultimate Team. Like, I have a Mutt team, but you get past 40, it ain't going to happen on the NFL field. Come on, Paxton. Anyway, we will discuss now Kenyan Drake, Matt, a player, again, that you and I saw at the Senior Bowl. And for me, I've always called Drake like a poor man's Tevin Coleman. Like, get him in a straight line, let him use the speed, whatever. He's got little scissor legs and goes down with first contact. I'm not terribly excited about this Dolphins backfield, by the way, which will probably have C.J. Anderson next year. I'm just going to put that out there. because I don't think Anderson returns to the Broncos in 2018. And I know Adam Gase loves him. So, just think about that dynasty-wise, and how it could that Jay Ajayi role next season could be CJ Anderson. That's for a different time, Matt. But let's discuss the guy for now, and it is Kenyan Drake, a player that has that nice straight line speed, but in my opinion, Matt, doesn't create his own space well, and, will have trouble if he's got to run inside and try to get skinny and try to look for cutback lanes, like all these sorts of things. Think of him as a guy, you need to get him a lane. You get him a lane, run a straight line, builds up speed. Cool, but how often can they do that? So let's discuss the fantasy prospects of the Dolphins' #1 running back now in Kenyan Drake.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see him as a situational #1 running back, because when you look at Kenyan Drake, if his strengths remain the same as from what his strengths and weaknesses were at Alabama, then you're looking at a guy who's best used in space as opposed to between the tackles. And a great example of this is there was a play earlier in the game where Matt Forte against Buffalo here was in a set where there was no tight end, at the line of scrimmage, and he pressed a lane up the middle and bounced it to the left side where the receiver ran off a cornerback, and there's a huge lane up the left side where he got, probably about 8 or 9, 10 yards on the play. And it was done because he manipulated the defense well and understood the run scheme well enough to get as close as possible to the middle of the field and then bounce it outside so that his outside block could be set up and there'd be that huge space in the middle and the linebackers would be manipulated. And this is a common issue for a lot of college backs who aren't able to do that. I was just watching Mark Walton of Miami, and I posted this on the RSP blog today showing a play that was just like this one I described to Matt Forte, but Walton didn't manipulate the play and didn't work around there. He just decided to take what was up the middle, which wasn't even the design of the play, and ended up having to collide with a linebacker like a yard past the line of scrimmage and fight for 4. It was an impressive display of physical skill, but running back, more than you expect, is brains over brawn. And so when you look at a veteran player, that's what you're looking for, that ability to understand the scheme and manipulate it. And Kenyan Drake didn't show an ounce of that at Alabama. When we had our draft show, I think that was my gas mask moment, probably, was when they drafted Kenyan Drake, because it was ludicrous to me that they would go that high with him. But if he's developed, and I haven't seen evidence of it, he hasn't had enough carries for us to see other than maybe in a practice. And, if he's shown enough refinement there, then yes, the physical ability is there, but I didn't see it conceptually, and I'm still skeptical until proven otherwise on a Sunday, and to me, if you're going to look at this as Kenyan Drake's the #1 back, then I'd say if Kenyan Drake plays a 4-3 defense and they run a lot of outside plays, then he might have a good shot at some decent yardage and maybe break a big play once in a while. If they run against a 3-4 defense a lot, then you're looking at a more of an inside runner that I would prefer to have, and that would be Damian Williams. And Damian Williams is also the more disciplined pass protector and a reliable receiver that they like to use in the red zone. So to me, this is not a running back share that I really want to have unless I'm desperate or just have, I'm just playing a lottery ticket at the end of my roster right now.
End of the bench lottery ticket. Let's talk about Kenyan Drake, Bloom, and really we should have seen. I guess we shouldn't have seen. We shouldn't have been surprised by the Jay Ajayi deal, not only because of the healthy scratch last year in Week 1, but also because the comments that Adam Gase made, where he basically called out Ajayi without calling him out, but saying like players aren't taking their playbook home, they're not studying, and you're on board or you're overboard with a guy like Gase. So let's discuss Drake in the fast lane now for fantasy owners.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about this on the show, on one of our shows earlier this week, Cease, and what you see, and Matt Waldman has laid this out well, and Matt and I watched Drake independently, and I remember talking to you about him and really having the same outcome, which is physical talent, traits, if you will, but it's just not married to skill. It's just not married. He just can't summon up the agility, explosiveness, straight line speed, size that he has and turn it into production. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're giving him 12 or 15 touches a game or 18 touches, that there might be one that's schemed up well, a play that's designed well and executed well that gets him out in space And even though instinctively it may not be there because it's not married to skill, you'll still see flashes of it. So as a desperation play, I picked him up in one of our leagues where it's a dynasty IDP league, 40-man roster. I'll see what happens. Do I believe in him? No. Do I believe in my projections this week? No. If I had to play one of Williams or Drake this week, especially in PPR league, I'd play Drake, but I'd play Rod Smith over both of them. Can we talk about Rod Smith? Maybe that's the best thing I can say about this. I think there's 5 times the chance that we're talking about Rod Smith next week than we're talking about Kenyan Drake.
I was talking to a Cowboys source. Let's just say that, Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, they're playing possum with McFadden.
Yeah, with Rod Smith.
With McFadden. And, when I mentioned Rod Smith, he was like, ha, 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 ha. Like, no, they're playing possum with McFadden. So let's talk about Rod Smith. Let's talk about it.
Well, I just think that we know what Alfred Morris is. We know what Darren McFadden is at this point. And I think if there's one running back, if we are to take what we've gotten in the media at face value, and you're right to bring up that maybe we shouldn't, although I'm not sure what tactical.
It has stuff from a conversation with very few people in it, but included McFadden and Jerry Jones.
Yeah. Well, look, it's very possible that there's subterfuge here, although I'm not really sure what the benefit would be of Kansas City not knowing which running back they're going to see more of, whether it's Morris or McFadden. I mean, maybe if it was McFadden 7 or 8 years ago, but look.
It's the Elmer Fudd plan.
Jane Slater at Slater NFL, reporter for the NFL Network today, said that it is Morris as the number 1 running back, but that Rod Smith is number 2 and Darren McFadden is number 3, but all 3 will get touches. Okay. Gary Brown, a name that we all like. We remember fondly from the Titans days, the Oilers days. Rod, I think,
yards in 8 games.
Yeah. He said, Rod, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people because I think he can be a 3-down guy. This is a running back coach, okay? I'm looking for the tweet. I'm pretty sure that, Jane Slater also reported yesterday, that teammates of Rod Smith say he's the most underrated player on the team, and several of them seem to think Rod Smith's really going to rise to the occasion. Now, it may not happen. Nothing may come of it. Rod Smith may have 2 touches for 6 yards, and that's all we see of him every game, 2 or 3 touches for 6 yards, okay? But if there's a running back that we're abuzz about that in a Cowboys uniform next week on the waiver wire show, a running back that you look back and say, wow, I'm so glad I added him because this could help really change my season. It's not going to be Alfred Morris. It's not going to be Darren McFadden. Rod Smith's the one guy where I can see a path to. He's a 6'3", 230-pound back. He looked really good in the preseason. He got in mop-up duty for San Francisco, and in one of those runs, you see that he's not a running back that just can offer size. There's physical talent more than that, and it is the Dallas Cowboys running game that can be productive, maybe not dominant. I'm relying somewhat on the reporting from Jane Slater, but I'm also relying on what I saw in the preseason. I'm also relying on what I know about Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden at this point, that if they're just going to let each of these guys get some touches and then evaluate and go forward from there, there's only one that has a chance to leave the others behind. And when you hear the running back coach say, I think he can be a 3-down player, I take notice.
Matt, I don't like tall backs. Maybe it's Rod Bernstein memories burned in my brain. Kind of like Brandon Jacobs, whatever. But let's discuss this. I don't want to sound like one of those Russell Wilson short guys. But Rod Smith is pretty sizable for a running back.
He is, and I'm kind of, I grew up on Eddie George and Kevin Mack, and some of the taller guys who seem to be able to do a decent job of getting their pads down. So, when I looked at Rod Smith, I actually had him as a project, as a long-term project who I was, interested in the rookie scouting portfolio the year that he came out, because the real issue with him was that he got kicked off Ohio State. He he was a big time talent who just had discipline issues. He had disciplinary issues, and they thought he turned a corner, and then he screwed up again, and Urban Meyer was like, I'm done, and kicked him off the team. But in the moments that I got to see him actually play, you saw a lot of good agility. He had good stop-start quickness. He could jump cut. He had good footwork. He could run for power. He had good burst to the edge. You could see him catch the ball in terms of having good hands. He understood how to use his hands, even though it wasn't something where, he had a lot of volume with it. And when you've seen him with the Cowboys, you've seen similar things. He's a powerful running back who seems to understand what he needs to do to be able to bleed the most out of every play. And I don't blame them for giving him the or likely giving him the opportunity, because this is a back that, whereas he may get stronger as he gets more opportunities, and I think that will likely happen because he doesn't look like a back where, like Darren McFadden, who even when he had a Pro Bowl season 2 years ago, Darren McFadden, there were runs where it looked like he wanted to stop and ask for directions in the middle of the play. It was like, like he had to take a triptych out of his pocket, an old-fashioned AAA triptych, and like leaf through the pages and go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to go over there. That's how he looked. He looks sometimes in terms of vision. Rod Smith isn't going to have that problem, other than maybe he misread a situation or a miscommunication that he'll learn from. And I like what Morris is and what he's about. He's a safe, conservative play, but I don't blame anyone for picking up Rod Smith and taking a shot on him, because this could very well be an Aaron Jones situation with a better offensive line.
The Audible Live, we're here for you, and we love you. Bob asked quickly, Bloom, thoughts on Josh Gordon?
He can play in about 3-4 weeks. There's nobody standing in his way on the roster to playing time. I don't know. I guess the reality here is, in the background, by far the most entertaining story of the trade deadline week was the A.J. McCarron trade issue. And it's interesting how so many things in the NFL are taboo, but when it comes to discussing the Browns and their follies, everyone talks. Everyone gives lots and lots of details too. So assumption of rational organization. I don't know. I don't know. There was talk that they were maybe trying to trade his rights before the trade deadline. So I'm not even sure if he's going to take the field for the team. It's been such a long layoff that it's really hard to picture him doing much. But as Matt Waldman has pointed out, if there's one thing Deshaun Kaiser does well, it's throwing on the perimeter, down the sidelines. And if we remembered Josh Gordon with Brian Hoyer, the circle of life in the NFL with Hoyer back in the Patriots now 3 years. Yeah, Jason Campbell too. You're right. It was just it takes you back to the days of Todd Bowman and Randy Moss. I'm not comparing Josh Gordon to Randy Moss, but there is a place on the NFL field for that sandlot style. I'm just going to throw it up as far as I can, and you do the rest, big man. And what else is there for the Browns pass offense to do at this point? So I'm not going to blame anybody for picking up Josh Gordon and holding him for a couple of weeks to see what happens. I'm not doing it in a league where there's 5 bench spots, but in typical 12-team, 20-man league, it's not crazy.
And who was Kaiser's favorite target a couple of years ago in Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
This is Will Fuller with muscle and actual skill to catch tough passes. So
yeah.
Yeah, and I will say this. I have a hard time not thinking of the half-baked scene where it's like, you're addicted to marijuana? I just hope Gordon's got his life on track, and inebriants can grab a hold of people, in various different ways. So let's just hope the kid gets his life on track and gets
he's young
to playing football. Right.
He's still younger than a lot of rookies.
Plenty of time left in the league and then after the league. It's not all about football. It's about living a productive and quality life. And certainly we appreciate each and every one of you for watching out there. The chat room, man, it's just busier and busier every week. It's so much fun interacting with you guys in the chat room. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sending in the Shut 'em Down videos, the Cue the Chuck D videos to us. Now we've got guys saying, like, I don't do Cue the Chuck D, but I air drum to hold on. Like, we just love it, man. And we appreciate you having you as part of our community. And I think that's the final note that I want to end on this evening is it's about the power that we have as a community, as humanity, and as we can go forward and be positive influences to each other, be positive influences in our lives to those around us. That's how you make a difference. It may seem like things are crazy and out of control in the real world, but you can make a difference in your community. You can make a difference with your family and the people, the friends, the people around you. We hope to make a difference to you. We hope to make you happy. That's the bottom line. Like, just hope you're happy, because I'm happy talking to my friends, my brothers, Matt Waldman, Sigmund Bloom, Dr. Jene Bramel. I'm Cecil Lammey saying thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned. As always, stay frosty.